Welcome to Learn.Lead.Repeat, a video podcast of Lumberton ISD. We're so happy to be back with our audience today. And again, as we always say, our amazing CTE students behind the cameras and our teacher who've helped them learn so much. And we're super happy to have our kiddos that are helping us today. As always, in Lumberton here, we like to include our CTE kids whenever we can. Everything we do is about kids. And today's episode is balancing the need for perfectionism with the ability just to move forward as a leader. So, our podcast is about leadership, but sometimes I find as a leader, and this is something that I work on all the time, I'm also thinking kind of a subtopic of the episode is maybe advice from a recovering perfectionist. So I have suffered with that a little bit in my career, but when we're talking about leadership, Dr. G, you and I obviously have leadership roles within a school district, and we try to bring in guests on our podcast, and we're super happy today to have Wayne McDaniel, our Hardin County judge, with us, and we think about leadership in all aspects of our society, and I can't think of a better example than to have Wayne with us today, who helps guide and lead our county in all the things that we do. So Dr. G, welcome to episode 4. Again, we've made it through 3, and I think we're getting better and better. I know our students are.
Yes, sir. Well, our podcast is definitely not perfect, but we're getting there. Our podcast is about promoting leadership aspects. And definitely if we try to make each episode perfect and, work on every detail, we would probably never have gotten out of episode 1. So, but we are getting our goal accomplished, and I think we improve every day. So I think as far as perfectionism goes, as long as we get better every time, or we are better than we were yesterday, then we can call it perfectionism.
Well, I agree, and the way that I like to look at it, and you had a great idea with our podcast. I always give you credit for coming up with this idea and just kind of pushing us to pull it off. And there's a sign actually that sits in my office, and it was kind of a joke, not joke, from some of the folks I work with that says, "Hang on, let me overthink this thing." So sometimes I do tend to overthink and want to make things perfect, but I really have found in my career that the best way to go forward is to have an idea, to hash it out as best you can, and then just take that step forward. And Wayne, I can't think of a better example, and I definitely don't want to harp on the pandemic that we've just gone through and are really still going through in some ways, but talk to us as a leader, as a community and a county leader and a county judge. Kind of what is your approach to making decisions and going forward in the face of ambiguity and not really knowing the outcome?
Well, disasters kind of become our second nature here in Southeast Texas, and so while there's no book for going through a pandemic, and by the way, pandemic is a word from 2020 that I hate. There's about 20 of them.
Yep.
And that's one of them, and there's no book to go through that. So you just rely on your experiences from the past, from other disasters. You also pull on your natural resources or your most precious resources, and that's your people, your team. And, we were very fortunate. I really helped to facilitate a 6-county coalition with Jefferson, Hardin, Orange, Tyler, Jasper, and Newton counties, and pooling not just the leaders together, but our emergency management coordinators and their personnel, and taking experiences from the past, from hurricanes, tornadoes, and fires and floods and everything else, and that's how we did that. And a while ago you mentioned recovering perfectionist. I thought you were talking about me for a minute, but there's perfection goes out the window when something like that happens.
Well, and I've only been here since June of last year, and gosh, I believe that you might have been one of the first 2 or 3 phone calls I made
Yes.
once I was fortunate enough to be able to come to Lumberton, and I think you and I got along very well from the beginning, and we have become pretty fast friends on lots and lots of things. We've dealt with safety security issues. We've dealt with hurricanes and tropical storms. Obviously, we have our FEMA dome here in the district, which we've used multiple times. We've worked with you guys closely in the health department on the pandemic and response and superintendent Zooms. I feel like you and I and other superintendents in the area have really just had to find a way to make things happen in the light of nearly impossible situations. And I've heard it called 100 shades of wrong. It's like everything that we've done in the last year, we don't know. We don't know if it's right. You don't
History
know.
will tell us.
That's correct. You don't know if it's the right call, but you take all the information you have, you make the best decision you can at the time, and you, like you said, you rely on your team. I'm super fortunate to have an unbelievable team of experts and leaders at Lumberton that we rely on when we have these kind of situations. But I had a mentor of mine one time tell me, as a leader, you don't want to get into the situation of what he called paralysis by analysis, meaning we can sit and analyze something for hours, but the outcome that we get is not going to be any better than if we got a good, strong team together and used our instincts to go forward. And Dr. G, I know you and I have talked about that a little bit before.
Oh, yes, we have. And I have discussed before my experience with my doctoral studies. In the doctoral studies, and when you have a very large amount of reading and writing assignments to do, you don't have much time to be a perfectionist. And one time I was driving my car and listening to a podcast by Zig Ziglar, and I heard this phrase that is actually the quote of our episode is, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly until you learn how to do it well. And I had to stop. I literally pulled over and I rewound the podcast and I listened to it again. And I said, this is it. This is how I proceed. I just do the best I can with the amount allotted for the project. And that's how I have, this quote has led me through my doctoral studies, and it has helped me with my work. So I think that's something to consider. We do not have to be perfect. We just have to make sure that we do the best we can with the situation that we are in.
Well, one of my favorite authors, Jim Collins, obviously he's most famous for Good to Great, and he says that good is the enemy of great. But and I do agree with that. But I also think that sometimes we have to be sure that being perfect is not the enemy of good. And
That's
so,
correct.
Wayne, I've watched, county courts and been in many meetings with you, and just know that, I really feel like the role of the school leader this year and the role of the county judge have been pretty similar in that, with the impossibility of decisions. And so talk us through, as a county leader, like what goes through your head when you see a situation and you know that a big decision is coming up, but that there's really no way to get it perfect. So how do you proceed?
Well, prayer, a lot of prayer, getting advice from others if there's time to do that, of course. And then sometimes there's no perfect decision. You just have to make the decision that is best for the majority as a whole, whether it's employees, whether it's the citizenry, or whatever decision that we're making. I mean, you just have to, sometimes those are on the fly, and there's not time to think too much about it. But when there is time to think, you just pray about it, get advice from everybody, and you just make the best decision that you can for the majority.
Dr. G?
Yes, and one factor that I think when we talk about perfectionism and doing things well, we don't always have to be perfect. Sometimes we just need to enjoy the process, enjoy the journey. I know you told me when we were discussing the episode, you mentioned the example with fishing and how you're learning to fish and navigate your boat. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's when I first moved to Lumberton, I have a son who's a 9th grader, and he was so excited to learn that Lumberton had a fishing team. Well, he and I have fished many times before, but it's always been on somebody else's boat. And so, you get on the boat and you've got their tackle or your own tackle, but they lead you to the fish. And so you either catch them or you don't, but you're not responsible for whether or not you catch fish. So, I moved to Lumberton, I get an old used bass boat, and he and I start taking some trips out to Rayburn. And it doesn't matter what tackle you have in your boat, if you're not throwing the right stuff at the right time, in the right order and with the right technique, let me tell you, fishing's hard. And so I've been super humbled by fishing. I love it. I love being out on the water. I love being with nature. I love spending time with him. But wow, if I was to be a perfectionist at being a fisherman right now, then I would have already sold the boat after 4 or 5 trips. So, I can, for the money I spent on that used bass boat, man, I've spent a lot of money per fish that I have caught in the short time that I've been doing it. So yeah, I like to use that example, but I definitely take comfort in what you've said, Wayne, as far as just relying on your team, taking that first step, doing the best that you can. We like to create an organization where we feel that we are safe from the fear of getting in trouble for calculated risk taking. Sometimes we do have to take risks, and sometimes we do have to just take that first step towards making an effort to do something. Maybe it's a little bit different. Maybe it's not the way that we've done it in the past. Maybe it's not going to be perfect. But if it's something that we know in our heart is right, our team thinks it's right, we've seen it before, we know that it works, and we know that we have a good recipe, in my opinion as a leader, sometimes we just have to go forward and take that first step. And so I definitely want to encourage our audience to do that. Take that first step. Don't be afraid of being perfect for the sake of being good, because both can exist at the same time. We do want to get good to great, but in order to get to great, we have to be good first. So, Wayne, thank you for being on our podcast today. We really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Dr. G, again, as always, great insight. And I do want to tell our audience, this will be our last podcast for this school year, and we will pick it up with new topics and new guests in the fall. So thanks for watching our 4 episodes, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the fall.